So without further ado, we've talked about everyone else. So let's talk about the, I don't know, I guess elephant in the room, uh, Amazon. So I'm happy to introduce Robyn Johnson, who's the CEO of a little agency called Marketplace Blueprint. And she's going to talk a lot about some of the similarities between different platforms and what role my favorite acronym of all time plays, which is TACOS, uh, what it plays in your Amazon advertising and ways to make things a little bit better. So without further ado, Robyn, I'll pass it off to you.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be able to share today. I love getting to talk about Amazon. I don't know if I'll ever be as cool as Liz and Andy, but I'm working on it. So I want to start with, we've been eating, sleeping, breathing Amazon for about 12 years now. So if we seem a little twitchy over here, then that's probably why. I want to go over some basic review of ad types just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because I know that a lot of people are coming here primarily from other experiences with ads. And then I want to stop and talk about some specific best practices and unique concerns to Amazon that you might not have considered if you came from a Google or other paid search background. And I also wanted to take a moment to just quickly talk about that non-endemic advertising is coming quickly to Amazon. Sponsored display, they're going to be offering soon. It's currently in closed beta to be able to provide to service providers. I can't tell you much about it yet because a lot of it's still behind that closed beta wall, but this paragraph was approved to be shared. So if you have a service-based business, hotel, restaurant, they've been looking to advertise on Amazon, know that that is coming soon. If you are one of those and you're working with a verified or advanced partner with Amazon, then they can probably get you in that closed beta. Maybe some of them might have permanently closed until it goes live, but something for them to keep an eye out. Now, one thing that we kind of already have touched base a little bit is the difference between managed versus self-served advertising. I'm going to be looking primarily at self-managed advertising because that is, kind of like we was said earlier, that's really kind of what people think of when they come to think about paid search and Amazon. So when it comes to sponsored products, sponsored brands, and sponsored display, which is a little bit more upper funnel and really kind of is Amazon's effort to try to bring programmatic ads to people who maybe don't have that programmatic experience, there's a lot of different things that we can do within ads and within the ads on Amazon. I wanted to put a couple of quick, not nearly as pretty slides as the ones before, but just kind of clarify and create the differences between different products. If you're looking to get into Amazon, and you're trying to figure out some of the quirkinesses around ad types, around match types, those kinds of things, then I would really recommend that you go Google Amazon Learning Console and take their training. When they first brought it to us as a partner, I was like, oh, well, how good could this be? But it actually is pretty good in helping explain some of the things that can be a little quirky about Amazon. Of course, there's going to be a lot of additional information that's going to be required, but it's a good start to just make sure that you're aligned on the vocabulary. And I have here broken out, brand registry is a tool, if you don't know about it, that's available from Amazon. It's designed to help you be able to enforce copyright and trademark infringement, but also it's kind of an abracadabra where it opens up additional doors like some of these products like sponsored brand, sponsored display. And we're going to talk a little bit about buy box and inventory levels. So in case you come back to this, I wanted you to have that. And then there's specific creative that is different by ad type. But still on Amazon, a lot of creative is really going to be pulled from your primary detail page. That product detail page and the primary image are going to be a big component of your overall ads. So it's important that you really pay attention to the way that those are presented on Amazon. And you're really looking at scale, you're looking at shadows, and you're looking at how the thumbnails display next to other thumbnails. One thing that I would really recommend is that if you're just starting with sponsored brands, to go beyond just the headline placement. There are additional placements and video ads. We're still getting really good returns on video ads. While there has been a lot of adoption over the last 4 years over Amazon advertising and has gotten much more competitive, there are still a lot of opportunities, especially if you're able to go into some more of the advanced targeting methods and into some areas that require more creative, because a lot of Amazon agencies, a lot of Amazon sellers haven't had to do that ad creative before. And so there can be a slower adoption rate. One of the things on sponsored brand is you are able to drive specifically to custom pages. So this is really helpful, especially if you have like a new to category product, or maybe there's some sort of indoctrination or kind of customer education that's required. In that case, using these custom pages, so you can, on sponsored brands, you can send directly to the product detail page, you can send directly to the store page, or you can send to a custom page. Now, these custom pages do require a little bit more creative, but it's a great place if you know that you really need a video in order to show how a product works. This is a great place to test to see how those things can increase your conversion rate. Of course, include the videos on your primary detail pages in the carousel. Of course, if you have access to premium A+ content, you're now able to use videos in your A+ content, as well as a lot of new modules that are just really different and have a lot more interactivity and allow for a lot more content. But custom pages can be have a big impact in your overall ad returns on sponsored brands. Now, as you're looking at your reporting on Amazon, one thing I just would like to remind you is that advertising reporting on Amazon settles after 48 hours. So it's one mistake that we see people who are trying to manage their own ads make is they're looking at the report for yesterday and they're trying to make ad decisions for today. Especially during Q4, there were a couple days where those numbers were wildly off. They were completely misreported. After a couple days, they did settle down. But in general, we want to make sure that you're letting that data settle at least 48 hours. You can make changes every day, but we want to make sure you're making changes a little further back. I would say for most people who are managing their own ads, 1 to 2 times per week is going to be sufficient to be going in there and adjusting bids, depending on the velocity, of course, of your ads. We touched a little bit in the previous session about programmatic ads, and they can be really, really valuable. With Marketing Stream, you can get a lot of demographic information, and if you have somebody that is familiar with that programmatic ads, it can be really great. If you have a smaller budget, now there are some budget minimums, but you can usually get around that depending on as long as you're working with an agency that has other DSP clients. But if you're looking for specifically all performance-based campaigns, then sometimes you are better off kind of maximizing sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display before going up the funnel, unless you already have programmatic ads that are working pretty well. So let's go ahead into some of the specific considerations that are specifically for Amazon advertising. Now, this is going to be a little bit basic, but I promise I have some more different stuff, some other stuff going forward, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip over the fundamentals to get to the shiny things. And the first is if you're brand new to Amazon, there's automatic and manual campaigns. Sometimes people will think like automatic means you can just set them and forget them. I promise you that is no longer how things work on Amazon. You need to be actively managing them, actively using negative match types. If your agency isn't adding negative match types to your automatic campaigns, then there's probably a significant amount of leakage. Then the other thing we want to think about with manual campaigns, it's not like one's beginner and one is advanced. They can be used together to create a more advanced strategy. So if we just use one or we just use the other. Now, of course, there are strategies that will eliminate one or the other depending on niche products or rare circumstances. But for the most part, it can be helpful to have an automatic campaign running at a low bid to help you harvest additional words and then moving those keywords into manual campaigns. And then we want to make sure we're optimizing these on a regular basis. And when I say optimize, I mean increasing bids that are for things that are working, lowering bids that things are not working, but also adding match types. And testing multiple match types is really important. Sometimes, especially in the private label community, there can be this idea that exact match is the best match. And for a lot of products, it can be. But we have products that perform significantly better in broad or phrase. So it's important to test all of those different match types, and it allows you for a little bit more flexibility to kind of make sure that all of those keywords are significantly covered as changes in seasonality and competitor landscape happen. So when you're building your ads, it's important to begin with the end in mind. So if you're looking to grow your ads, we want to think about, if I put these two products together, so if I put the red shirt and the blue shirt together, does that mean that the red, when it's advertising for the red shirt, or someone types in red shirt, are they going to get the blue shirt in their result? So that's not going to convert well. So we really want to think about scalability. How much granularity are you going to have access to in the way that your campaigns are set up as you grow, and how much ability are you going to have to turn those keywords on and off. So you really want to think about what is your long-term strategy, what is the long-term market cap that you're looking to get to. Otherwise, we can find that you're having to kind of start over a little bit more and not have as much usable data as you go into more advanced techniques, or you move from agency, from self-managed to agency. One thing that I wanted to touch base on too is the broad match modifiers. This broad match modifiers were fairly new to Amazon. It used to be if you said shoe with broad, it would put together different phrasing and it would put together a little bit of looser match, but it pretty much stuck with shoes. Then it started to change to be a little bit more like how Google is now, where you could put in shoe and you might get loafer, you might get slipper. So you might say, so with a broad match, you can add this little plus sign in, and it changes the way that the match type works. So instead of it being also, for shoes, it also showing up for Adidas or slippers for mom, it really does kind of limit it more to the keywords that are around shoes. Now you might say, well, that isn't news, but in the last couple months, Amazon changed this from just being sponsored products to, or just from being sponsored brands to also sponsored products. So you do want to, if you've seen a sudden dip in your campaigns, you're trying to figure out what it was, go back and look and make sure that that wasn't something that you missed, in kind of go in there and take a real deep dive into your performance and make sure that wasn't the cause. The other thing that we see people kind of getting stuck on is the bidding strategy. There are 3 types, and there's a time and a place for everything, including fixed bidding strategy. But for those of you that are beginning, most of the time we're going to recommend down only. If you are doing a very aggressive push where you're really focusing on launching and ranking, then there is a time where up-down bidding can be a good strategy. But this is going to allow Amazon to increase your bid significantly. So we want to be careful in the way that we do that. Now, when it comes to Amazon, because so much of your listing comes from your product detail page, everything's going to start with a well-optimized listing. And I have a shot here of some of the things that are part of a well-optimized listing. And I'm happy to provide these slides, for anybody that wants. I can put them in the Slack channel that belongs to the Paid Search Association, or if they're going to email them out, then that's great too. But you want to really make sure you have all of those components. And the most important thing is going to be your title and your primary image. Now, as you're looking at that, we're talking about kind of different bidding strategies, things along those lines. A lot of times for sponsored products, people will spend a lot of money to try to get to top of search. This means that CPCs are obviously going to be a lot higher for those. It's important that you test other placements, because especially on competitive products, other placements can be significantly less expensive and very effective, because these other placements could be on the other detail page. In fact, one of the strategies that can be really effective is filling the shelf. So there can be some things here, this is the frequently suggested products. Sometimes you can add a virtual bundle if you're not able to fill the shelf, to kind of push these sponsored products a little further down the page. Don't expect a lot of conversion for the most part from those virtual bundles, but they can kind of change the way the page is laid out a little. But if you have a large variety of products, then it can be really helpful to make sure that you're filling this page. So especially if maybe you have something like seasoning salt, where there's a lot of different kinds, and maybe there's several people that have a much lower price. By filling the shelf, you can increase average order value, but you can also decrease the ability for people to kind of move from your competitor to take market share from people that came originally to your listing, maybe even through your own branded search. Now, when we're looking at when do we know when to make changes to our page or our creative, then obviously the first place we want to look is the conversion rate of our listings. And as you're making creative changes, you want to see that unit session percentage is changing with it. Now, we do have to take that to a grain of salt. If you redid your listing and you did completely redid your targeting, then of course that's going to impact these numbers. But we want to look under reports, business reports, detailed page sales and traffic. You can get by parent or by child the conversion rate for your products, and that's going to be this unit session percentage over here. We kind of recommend that you broadly aim for 7 to 15%. The more competitive your category, the more kind of acceptable it is to have maybe a lower conversion rate. Especially if you're in a very niche product, we want to see that conversion rate be a little bit higher. And especially if you have branded search that's driving traffic already. The other metric that we want to look through is click-through rate. So if you see that you have your click-through rate is not matching, maybe you're having low click-through rate and a high conversion rate for a specific set of keywords, we want to look at what's driving those keywords, that click-through rate. So we want to look at things like, is your title truncating in a way that is not really demonstrating what the product is? But also we had a product that was similar to this, and it was actually a little bit further out because they had it so you could see the bottom of the tassel. So on this blue one, it was even farther away, so you couldn't really see the charm on it. By simply changing the product in the way that it's laid out. And we've seen this across several different verticals. One, it was a kid's shirt where they had one sleeve folded over the stomach and one sleeve, set out. That changed the proportions. And so it made their thumbnail look significantly smaller. We've also seen this on, like hair products where they've added a shadow under the bottom of the product to make it look, aesthetically more pleasing, but in that they've changed the perspective. And so even though their bottle might actually be more ounces than their competitor, it looks smaller in the thumbnails. So really take a critical eye to the way that your thumbnails are performing, the way that those primary detail pages and your titles are, and then also look at potentially running some coupons or deals. Some of these run in the ads, and so that they can help significantly drive and boost that click-through rate. This can be especially important utilizing deals to try to help with that overall organic ranking. Try to give yourself a boost before a primary season can help you capture more organic traffic during that season. It's also important to understand variations in ad performance. It is very difficult to successfully manage ads if you're only holding one of three variations. So let's say you hold the red variation, or you're running ads for the red variation, but the blue is being sold by another seller. Sometimes people are going to click on your ad and then go to that other listing, that other product, that other SKU on that parent-child relationship. And so it can be very difficult to judge the effectiveness, and you're going to be spending a lot of money driving traffic to a competitor if you don't hold all of the variations. So if you're a brand owner, that means really thinking about how you create and how you structure those variations. But the other thing that we really want to think about is whether you want to, not only whether you want to use variations or not. Let me take a second to talk about that. So there's kind of been an internal argument in the Amazon community. Is it better for me to have a red shirt, a blue shirt, and a green shirt and take up 3 spots in the SERP? Now some of the way they have been displaying that, they have been playing with that a little bit, or is it better to put them all in a variation? And assuming that you're able to get those 3 spots, then the question really is do you have enough ad or organic juice to get all 3 of those variations to the first page of search? If not, it's probably better for you to combine those efforts and put it into a variation, as long as that variation makes sense. Again, everything requires testing, and you can definitely orphan and put together families to test to see the performance of how variations work. One of the other things that I wanted to discuss briefly is double variations. So here you have a variation where you can have the flavor and the size. You want to be A/B testing this. There are times when this is very effective, and it's really good to help making sure that customers are aware of all of your options. But especially on something like this where we have a lot of out of stock items, what will happen is somebody will click 6-pack and then they go to click seaweed. And then when they click seaweed, now it defaults it to the only one that's available, which might be a 1-pack. And then they get upset when they don't get what they ordered because of the way that the variation works. So when there's a lot of out of stock on these variations, sometimes you might want to consider breaking those up if you know that out of stock is going to be for a long period. If it's a short period, sometimes it doesn't make sense to do that, but it is something to be thinking about. So we want to make sure we're really looking at when is it appropriate to use a single and like a double or triple theme variation, and testing how that changes the performance of our ads. And this also is going to affect the way that you look at tacos by product, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. So with when we think about keeping items in stock, it's more than just having successful ads does rely heavily on Amazon to remaining in stock with in stock levels, but that's more than just having units that are on their way or at Amazon. When inventory arrives at Amazon, before it arrives at Amazon, it's going to show out of stock. Once it gets checked in, it might show that it's available, but have a ship date that's pretty far out. Then once they'll send it from one warehouse to another warehouse to make sure it's closer so that when customers do buy it, they'll be able to get it quickly. This stage 3, you'll see a massive dip in conversion. Your ad costs are going to spike, sometimes 3x or more, and then it will go back down to when your conversion rate returns to normal. So we want to limit those ads in stage 2 and 3 where things are checked in and have a future date. This is an example of this was on 2/15, and it said that I could get my order as soon as February 23rd. For an Amazon shopper, that's like 8 million years. So you want to make sure you're of course are not going to convert at the rate that you would expect at that point. So we recommend that you turn your ads off once you have 15 days of fully available inventory left, and you don't turn them back on until you have 15 days of fully available inventory. And this, we base this off of previous sell-through rate. We created a macro that works with the bulk files and help us monitor this for our clients. And the reason we recommend 15 days is if you just wait till you have unavailable unit, sometimes they might make 15 available right away, and that might be enough to get you through one day. But then you will go back to that extended ship out date. And so if you're trying to maximize performance, obviously if you're just trying to cash grab, it's a little different. But if you're trying to maximize performance, this is what we recommend for most of our clients. Again, there's always exceptions. We also recommend that you look at really kind of moving beyond ACOS. So advertising cost of sale is an important metric, but we'd also like you to look at TACOS, and basically that looks at how the advertising is helping giving you a lift organically. Because sometimes it will look like a campaign is performing fairly poorly. Maybe the ACOS is 20, 30, 40%. But when we look at the overall difference that it's making in the organic sales, we can see that by spending the money to get to these specific clicks, it helps our organic position so much that maybe we're tripling or quadrupling the overall amount of sales. So when we consider that, it makes sense to continue running the ads. I have the formulas here just in case you need them. Amazon will not convert these. There are a lot of tools that will provide this for you, but something that you'll probably need to look at on your own. I really like looking at TACOS by product, especially if we can put them in groups. So if we have variations, we should be looking them at the group. Sometimes, it can be frustrating if you're working with an agency and you're like, the performance of the account is down, and they say, oh, well, it's because we launched this, or it's because this was out of stock. Looking at TACOS by product helps you to identify and work with your agency to identify products that are underperforming and not have it be masked by the overall account numbers. But there are some people who say, well, why don't we just manage all of our products by that? The reason we don't want to manage, we want to use TACOS by product as a kind of a guiding check-in piece and not a live and die metric, is because sometimes people will come in and they will end up buying a different product within your brand. And so it can be that attribution can be a little misleading unless you're really digging into the numbers. And it also doesn't really accurately show the impact of your sponsored brands and sponsored display ads. And really, at this point in Amazon, you really, for a strong strategic advertising strategy, you're going to need to use sponsored display and sponsored brands because sponsored products has become so highly trafficked. So you want to make sure you're separating also brand search. So this is important. I would ask your agency if they're not doing this, or if you're not doing this, it can help you really communicate how much of that search that you're looking to do is really capped, because you are, there's only so much search for your brand, and will help to identify when performance leveled off, not because the campaigns are no longer working and the keywords that you're targeting are not working, but that you've hit the maximum of the search for your total brand at that point. And unfortunately, especially now that competition has increased, some budgets are just too small. So in order to get incremental sales, we really need to think about how we are looking at and how we are looking at those. Sorry, I got distracted. So sometimes budgets are too small. So if you're not getting results, then I would recommend, in general, I'd always recommend with smaller budgets, limit the number of products, limit the number of keyword targets the different targets that you have, laser focus that ad budget on a smaller number of a smaller a smaller target, then use the profitability from that to be able to expand. So sometimes what I see is people have a budget that's so small that it doesn't really give you the opportunity to really make any difference besides some incremental sales that are usually not profitable. So sometimes the budgets are just too small. So narrow your product mix, narrow your keywords or other targeting. And then I just wanted to mention, if you're trying to drive traffic from off Amazon, Amazon attribution is a great program. It can be a little quirky and it does take a little time to set up, but it does provide a lot of information like add to cart. And there's also a brand referral discount. So they give you a small discount when you bring that traffic to Amazon. Here's my contact information, and Seller University and Amazon Learning Console are great. I'm happy to provide this deck if it would.